I said I needed space and ended up sleeping with my ex. He deleted me from his life. Hello, everyone. My name is Anita. I'm 29 years old. And, my life is falling to hell because of my actions. I've already been through a lot and I need some advice on it. But I plead with you all to be lenient. Okay, so I'm not even sure where to start, but yeah, I told my boyfriend I needed space. I thought I was doing the mature thing, you know? I felt overwhelmed, I wasn't thinking clearly, and I just wanted to breathe without having to explain myself every second. But then I did something stupid, really stupid. I saw my ex. I shouldn't have, but somehow I found myself in that situation. And now, my boyfriend is gone. I don't even know how to process it. Me and my boyfriend had been dating for 3 years, and honestly, a lot of this mess started long before that day that everything shattered. Things had been shaky for months. We weren't really seeing eye to eye anymore. He'd do little things that would get on my nerves, talk over me mid-sentence, leave me out of decisions, nitpick stuff like how I folded towels or what I ordered for dinner. Normally that kind of stuff wouldn't have bothered me as much, but when it piles up, it starts feeling like a slow, silent war. I was constantly irritated, he was constantly defensive, and the vibe just stopped feeling safe. I kept trying to push through, telling myself every couple fights. People have rough patches, but after a while it didn't feel like a rough patch anymore. It just felt like who we were now. It got to a point where even when we weren't arguing, I still felt tense, like I was bracing for one. I'd say something as simple as, "I don't feel heard lately." And he'd respond with, "You always turn everything into a problem." That line right there, that one pushed me over. So I told him I needed space. I didn't scream and I didn't make a scene. I just said I needed some time to figure out where my head was at, because I didn't like who I was becoming in the relationship. He looked hurt, obviously, and he asked if we could figure it out together. I told him no. I meant it. I needed to breathe without him hovering, without the back and forth, without the guilt trip that always came after every serious conversation. He didn't stop me. He just said, "Okay," and asked me to make a pact with him. I didn't know what he meant, so I asked him to clarify. He told me that if I needed a break so badly, then he would give it the break, but that we had to agree that we wouldn't cheat on each other. We wouldn't have intimate moments with anyone else while we were on break. I didn't care because it wasn't sex I was looking for. I just needed to breathe, so I agreed without skipping a heartbeat. He didn't say anything more after that, and I was too emotionally drained to analyze it. I packed a few things and went to stay at my sister's place. She didn't ask a ton of questions, just gave me the guest room, made me tea, and let me be. I spent most of those first few days sleeping, scrolling aimlessly, and trying not to text him. I wasn't trying to move on. That wasn't the plan. I just wanted to clear my head. Then came the party. It was some low-key get-together my sister dragged me to. Nothing fancy, just her friend's birthday, a bunch of wine, and random people standing around pretending to network. I was trying to be social, or at least not awkward, and at some point I walked over to grab another glass of wine off the tray that was just starting to make the rounds. And that's when it happened. I reached out, and so did someone else at the same time. Our fingers brushed, and when I looked up, it was him, my ex. My heart dropped, and it was not because I still loved him or whatever, but because the last time we spoke, I ended it so fast and so harshly he didn't even have time to process it. There were no explanations, no closure. I cut him off cold, blocked him, and I was done. He hadn't seen me since. He laughed when he saw me, like genuinely laughed. The kind of laugh that's half shock, half disbelief. It wasn't mean or sarcastic, it actually made me feel kind of seen, I guess. I laughed too, because what else do you do in a moment like that? It had been over 3 years. No texts, no calls, nothing. I blocked him without a word and never looked back. We made awkward small talk. It was nothing too deep. He said I looked different, grown up, more relaxed. I told him he looked exactly the same, which was kind of a lie. He looked better, less angry, and more composed. There was this tight pause between us, like we both knew we were pretending it wasn't weird. And then he said it. He told me he missed me. Just like that. No lead up, no drama. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I've missed you." I didn't know what to say. My chest tightened up. I just smiled a little and said something like, "It's been a while," which was such a weak response. But I didn't want to open any doors. That night, I kept thinking about it, about him, about how I ended things, and never gave him a real explanation. I didn't cheat on him, and nothing dramatic happened. I just got scared. The relationship was too intense, and I panicked, so I ghosted him. I don't think I even gave myself time to regret it until that night. So yeah, I texted him. I told myself it was just to clear the air. I wanted to explain, maybe apologize. He texted back almost immediately. We decided to meet up for coffee that weekend. That meetup was supposed to be innocent. You know, just catching up, hearing each other out, getting closure or whatever. We sat across from each other at this small cafe, laughing over the dumbest things like we were still in college. I told him about my job, he told me about his new place, and we just talked. It felt easy. Dangerous, but easy. When we said goodbye, he walked me to my car. He pulled me into a hug, and it lasted longer than it should have. I could feel his breath on my neck, and I didn't move. He didn't either. That night, I couldn't sleep. We met again the next week. I invited him over. I told myself I just wanted to talk in private, where I wouldn't have to watch what I said or worry about who might see us. I wore something casual but nice. Not trying too hard, but not too laid back either. We talked for hours. About us. About how we crashed and burned. About how I disappeared. I cried. He listened. And then I kissed him. It wasn't intentional. It just happened. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, but it didn't stay that way. We ended up in bed. It wasn't wild or crazy. It felt weirdly calm, like our bodies remembered each other. I didn't feel excited. I felt heavy. But I didn't stop it. Afterward, I told him I didn't know what this meant. He said he didn't either. I swore that would be the last time. Then the third time came. He texted me late at night. Want to go for a drive? I almost ignored it. I stared at my screen for 5 whole minutes, but I said yes. He picked me up and we just drove around the city, windows down, music low. It felt like we were kids again. He stopped the car outside his place and turned to look at me. I still think about you, you know. I didn't respond. I leaned in. We didn't even make it inside. That time was messy. In the car, clothes half off, windows fogged. There was nothing romantic about it. It was need. It was history. It was confusion. And after, I cried in the passenger seat. He didn't ask why. The fourth time happened after I told myself I'd finally cut it off for good. I was spiraling. I felt gross and guilty, but I also couldn't stop. He texted me to ask if I wanted to come over and watch a movie. I said no. Then 10 minutes later, I said I was already on my way. We barely made it through the first 20 minutes of the movie. He kissed me, I kissed him back, and that was it. Afterward, we just laid there in silence. I remember staring at the ceiling, wondering how I got here, wondering why I wasn't leaving. It wasn't just sex either. We talked before and after. We laughed. He asked if I was happy in my current relationship, and I didn't know what to say. I wasn't trying to run back to him, but being with him felt easier than facing what I was doing to my boyfriend. The fifth time happened the night before I was supposed to go back home, to my boyfriend's apartment. I still hadn't told him I ran into my ex. I hadn't told anyone. I felt like I was living 2 separate lives. I met up with my ex at a hotel that time. I told myself it was for closure, but deep down, I already knew it wouldn't be. The second I saw him in the hallway, I knew I wasn't there to talk. It was the most intense it had ever been. We didn't rush it. It felt like we both knew it might be the last time, even though no one said it. When it was over, I didn't want to move. I wanted to stay right there, wrapped up in that version of myself that didn't have to face the consequences yet. I didn't sleep at all that night. I left the hotel early, went straight to my sister's place, took a shower, and just sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours. I hadn't spoken to my boyfriend in days, and the worst part was I wasn't even sure I wanted to. Then things took an unexpected turn. It happened on a random Tuesday. I had just finished work and was walking through the parking lot, phone pressed to my ear, completely lost in the conversation. I was talking to my ex again, something that had become more and more regular. To me, we were just talking. Nothing more, but the things I said were crossing so many lines I stopped keeping track. That day, I said I missed him. I actually said the words. I said I missed him and that I felt safe with him, and I laughed the kind of laugh I used to save for my boyfriend. that I had a great time with him and our time together will always be cherished. It wasn't just a slip. I meant it at the moment. I wanted him to hear it. I wanted to feel what it felt like to give in to that version of myself again, the one who didn't overthink every word, who didn't feel constantly observed, who didn't feel like she was always disappointing someone. And that's when it happened. My boyfriend walked up behind me, just as I was saying it, just as I was out there, raw and comfortable, letting someone who wasn't him hear something that should have only belonged to him. I didn't even realize he was there until I saw his reflection in a car window. My stomach dropped. I turned around and saw him standing a few feet away, his face calm in the worst way ever, expressionless. But I could feel the disappointment from where I stood. I froze, completely. He didn't say much. He didn't scream or shout. He didn't ask 100 questions. He just looked at me like he was trying to piece something together that didn't make sense. Then he snatched my phone before I could even blink. He looked down at the screen and saw the contact ID, my ex, plain and clear, accompanied by several love emojis. I don't even know why I saved his contact that way. There was no nickname to hide behind, no fake contact name like bank or cousin, just that name. Perhaps it was to remind me that he was my ex and would always be my ex no matter what happened between us. But then I could tell it hit my boyfriend immediately. He didn't say anything for a second. He just stood there with my phone still in his hand. Then he ended the call. I could see the way it shifted everything for him, like something inside him just shut off. The kind of silence that comes when someone realizes they were the only one still believing in something. When he did speak, the only thing he asked me was, "Are you cheating on me with your ex?" I didn't answer. I didn't have an answer. Not one that made sense. Not one that wouldn't make me look exactly how I was acting. But what did come out of my mouth wasn't any better. I was so stunned that I couldn't say anything at first. Then he began going through my phone. He went through my chat with my ex and saw the nude images we exchanged with each other. He even saw some of the sex videos that we made while we were hooking up. My ex liked to make videos. He'd send them to me and write things like, "See how you drive me crazy," or "Damn girl, you're good." I watched as my boyfriend's jaw dropped, and that's when I developed the courage to say something. I gave an excuse, saying things hadn't been right for a while, how I'd been trying and he just hadn't been seeing it. How maybe if he had really listened to me, I wouldn't have felt so disconnected. I told him I felt alone in the relationship, like I was constantly trying to be perfect for someone who only loved the idea of me, not the real me. I said all of that like it was some kind of justification, like it explained away what he had just witnessed. It didn't. He stood there, still holding my phone, then slowly handed it back, not forcefully, and also not in anger. It felt like he was just done. It was the quietest goodbye I've ever experienced. He turned around and walked off without another word. There was no dramatic pause, no looking back. He just left. He didn't even give me the chance to say anything more, and I just stood there, still holding the phone. I just stared at the screen until it dimmed and went black. There was this long, slow ache that started in my chest and worked its way through my whole body. But I didn't cry. I didn't chase after him. I didn't even text him that night. And maybe I didn't say I was wrong because I wanted to believe I wasn't. I wanted to believe that the loneliness I felt in the relationship justified everything I did. That feeling unseen somehow made betrayal less real. But if I'm being honest, he was good to me. He was patient, more than I probably deserved. He listened, even when I was saying things that made no sense. He gave me space when I asked for it and stayed close when I didn't. He never raised his voice, never made me feel like I was less than. He supported me through breakdowns, through chaos, through days where I was completely unreachable. And the worst part is he really believed in us. I think he still did, even that morning before the whole drama that unfolded before him. I gave him doubt when he gave me stability. I gave him confusion when he gave me clarity. I handed intimacy to someone else while he was still choosing me every single day. But instead of admitting that, I stood there and made it about how I felt. How I needed something more. I made it sound like I was the one hurting. And perhaps I was, in some ways, but not like him. Not like the man who just found out his girlfriend was cheating right in front of him. Not like the man who walked up hoping for a hug and left with the truth. I think that moment will replay in my mind for a long time, not because it was loud or chaotic, but because of how quiet it was, how final it was. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to curse me out or call me names. I felt every bit of his calm, watching him walk away in that manner. Somehow that hurt more than anything else he could have done. I've always been good at disappearing. It's kind of my thing, pull away when it gets too real, too loud, and too complicated. It was easier with people I didn't really care about, but with him, I didn't want to disappear. Not from him, not like this. So after everything that happened in that parking lot, after he walked away and then I realized he had blocked me everywhere like I never existed, and the pit in my stomach, I went to his apartment. I needed to see him. I didn't even know what I was going to say. I just knew I couldn't leave it like that. But he wouldn't open the door. I knocked, waited, even texted him just in case, knowing full well I was blocked. But still no answer, not even footsteps behind the door. It felt like a wall had gone up between us, and this time, I couldn't scale it. I stood there for a while, just staring at the door, thinking maybe he was in there, listening, ignoring me on purpose. And the sad part is, I couldn't even blame him. So, in my usual avoidant fashion, I left. I went straight to my ex's place. I didn't call, didn't text, I just showed up. I was broke and frustrated. He let me in, probably thinking it was going to be one of those nights again, but the second I stepped inside, I started unloading. Not in a cute, I miss you way, but in a full-on emotional dump about my boyfriend. Everything just poured out. The incident at the parking lot, the blocking, the door, the silence I got. I couldn't stop talking. I don't even think I realized how much I was spiraling until I saw his face. He looked annoyed. He was leaning back on the couch, arms crossed, staring at me like I was a stranger. Then, out of nowhere, he stood up and cut me off mid-sentence. He said, and I remember this word for word, "I didn't let you in here to listen to you whine about your miserable little life." That hit me harder than I'll admit. Not because it was cruel, but because I think I expected him to care. After everything. After the nights, the history, the confessions. I thought he'd at least pretend. He didn't. He grabbed his keys and walked toward the door. Before he left, he turned and said, "Call me when you want to hook up again," then walked out. And for a second, I stood there like an idiot, staring at the spot he had just been standing in. I felt so hollow and stupid and alone. I went back to my sister's place, and the second I walked through the door, she asked me what the hell was going on between me and my boyfriend. I hadn't told her the full story yet. I didn't think I'd have to. But then she said, "He just dropped off your dog and some other things." That broke me in a weird, specific way. He loved that dog, more than I ever did, honestly. That dog followed him everywhere. He was the one who bought all her stuff, walked her at night, bathed her when she rolled in dirt. For him to give her back? That was truly the end, and the other things he sent were every single gift I had ever given him. I mean, how could he be so petty? I felt sick. I tried calling him again. I was still blocked. Tried email, nothing. I even checked Facebook, which I never do, and saw that he'd changed his relationship status to single. I don't know why, but that part pushed me over the edge. It wasn't the fact that we were over. It was that he was publicly over it. Like he wanted the whole world to know he had washed his hands of me. I was so enraged I drove back to his house without even thinking. I didn't care how crazy it looked. I just knew I needed to talk to him in person, face to face, without a screen, without the blocks, without the silence I was getting. He opened the door this time, but his face was cold and detached, like I was some random girl who interrupted his evening, not the person he'd spent 3 years building a life with. I didn't even ease into it. I asked him straight up why he was out here acting like we broke up for good, why he felt the need to make a whole show out of it on Facebook, like I meant absolutely nothing to him. He barely blinked. He just looked at me and said, "I don't owe you an explanation. You don't mean anything to me anymore." That cut deep. I stood there, stunned. I couldn't believe he said it so casually, with no emotion, like he didn't even hesitate. He just threw those words out like they were nothing, like I was nothing. And then, before I could even respond, he added, "I'll be needing that money I lent you a couple months ago." That one sent me over the edge, because he knew I didn't have it. He knew my finances were tight, that I was just barely keeping up with bills and still trying to pay off that dumb credit card. He knew. It wasn't the first time he's lent me money, and he definitely had never asked me to repay it, but suddenly he was asking me for the money. I was so pissed, but I didn't want to make it look as though I only wanted him for the money, so I went down on one knee and pleaded. I told him that I wanted him back in my life and that I couldn't live without him. He said he wouldn't take me back even if he wanted to, adding that there was no way he could tell what STD I might have contacted from my ex. He shook his head in despair, adding that he couldn't believe that all it took was a little break for me to reveal my true colors. I tried begging even more, and he just simply said he didn't have time for this. He looked so angry as he slammed the door in my face. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I went back to my sister's, but the thing about life is that it waits for no one. It didn't matter if my life was tumbling right in front of my eyes. I had work the next day, and I couldn't miss it. When I got to work, I noticed how people were giving me the side eye and shaking their heads. I tried approaching a colleague of mine whom I was friends with, and she just told me that she couldn't be seen with me and walked away. I cornered another friend of mine in the elevator and asked what was going on. Apparently there was a rumor that I had contracted STD from sleeping around. I almost screamed. A coworker of mine had seen me begging my boyfriend and didn't care to hear all the facts. They just caught whatever part of the gist that they could and completed the rest with absolute fiction. And as though I wasn't going through enough already, my boyfriend sent back every single gift that I had ever given him, no matter how small. I couldn't believe that he could be so petty. And by some unknown means, my mother found out about my breakup with my boyfriend, and she called me to ask what happened. I told her that we just grew apart and nothing happened. I thought that was it, but then she called my boyfriend to confirm what happened, and he couldn't just let a sleeping dog lie. He sent her the sex videos of my ex and I. I didn't even know he had them. He had sent them to himself that day. He took my phone and deleted the messages from my phone so I wouldn't know. My mother called me back and blasted the life out of me. She liked my boyfriend, and she was really angry. I can't even show my face to my family right now. I am so ashamed and lost, and I hate my boyfriend for what he did. I get that I hurt him, but couldn't he just handle it like a man? Update. It's been a few weeks since everything happened. I didn't expect him to come back or anything, but I guess I thought that everything would soften, that maybe at some point he'd respond to something. But no, he stayed completely gone, and I was still blocked. He was still quiet and still single on Facebook, and somehow that last part stings more than I thought it would. I ended up paying him half the money back, not because I had it, but because I couldn't stand the idea of him thinking I needed him for anything anymore. My sister helped me cover the rest, which only made me feel worse. I haven't told her the full story. I don't think I ever will. As for my ex, he's ghosted me too. I guess once the thrill of sneaking around wore off, I became just another story for him to tell. Honestly, I deserve that. I used him like a distraction, and I hate how ugly that sounds, but it's true. Right now, I'm just trying to stay focused. Go to work, feed the dog, pretend like things are fine when they're clearly not. Some days I feel angry, like none of this should have gone down the way it did, but most days I just feel hollow. And weirdly, I still miss him. I still want him, but clearly there's no going back because he has completely deleted me from his life, and that hurts a lot.